A group of white South Africans are now in the U.S. after being granted expedited refugee status.
And the South African government and refugee advocates are rebuking the Trump administration for welcoming 59 white South Africans as refugees.
This group in South Africa has faced racial persecution. In fact, the government there has vowed to take away their farmland that they own.
49 South Africans just fled their country, not for travel, not for opportunity, but because the U.S. government officially recognized them as refugees. Let that sink in. South Africans, refugees in America. What were they running from? And how did this even happen? They came from farming towns and tight-knit communities. Some were teachers, other business owners. All claimed they no longer felt safe, not just from crime, but from their own government. Threats, violence, isolation. And so they made a choice: leave everything behind or risk losing even more. They turned to America, and unbelievably, America said yes. These weren't just emotional pleas. They filed a legal case arguing they were being persecuted in South Africa for their identity, beliefs, and security fears, and the U.S. agreed. In a rare and explosive move, the American government granted them refugee status under international law. It's a decision that has shocked the global stage and thrown South Africa's reality into question. So who exactly were these 49 people? They were mostly Afrikaner Christians, a minority group in South Africa who've long claimed that they face systemic marginalization. Over the past decade, some have raised concerns about rising farm attacks, lack of police protection, and a political climate they believe is hostile to their cultural and religious identity. In rural areas, stories of fear are common: break-ins, threats, a constant state of alert. For years, these fears were dismissed by many as exaggeration or as part of a broader political narrative, but for these individuals, it felt real enough to flee. This isn't just a fringe conspiracy. These claims were backed by extensive documentation, legal briefs, human rights reports, and sworn affidavits describing violence, threats, and fear. And the U.S. courts found the evidence compelling enough to grant full refugee protection. That's no small deal. Under U.S. law, refugee status is granted only when someone can prove a well-founded fear of persecution based on race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or belonging to a particular social group. It's a high bar. And yet these South Africans cleared it. The ruling sparked outrage. Some South African officials dismissed it as politically motivated, an insult to the country's progress since apartheid. Others claimed it was a manipulation of the refugee system, a way to bypass normal immigration rules under the guise of persecution. But the real story is deeper, because this isn't just about race or politics. It's about fear. It's about safety. It's about whether ordinary people, regardless of their background, still feel secure in the country they call home. Crime in South Africa is a national crisis. Everyone knows someone who's been robbed, hijacked, attacked. Police response times can be slow. Security systems and electric fences are a way of life. For many, it's not just about surviving. It's about living in a state of constant alert. And it's not just the violence. There's economic uncertainty, political infighting, and failing infrastructure. Load shedding has become a defining feature of daily life. Unemployment is high, and young South Africans are increasingly looking for a way out. For the 49 who left, that way out was through a courtroom in the United States. It's worth noting that this case is unprecedented, not just in South Africa, but globally. Most refugee cases come from war zones, authoritarian regimes, or regions in active conflict. South Africa is a democracy with a constitution praised around the world, but what this case shows is that democracy doesn't guarantee safety, not for everyone. Some have compared this situation to cases from Venezuela or China, where minority groups have sought refuge despite their countries being on paper functional states. The U.S. has accepted refugees from those places too, and now from South Africa. This opens a door, a legal precedent, and a political firestorm. There are now rumors that more groups may follow suit, people preparing similar applications, citing political intimidation, violent crime, and lack of state protection. Lawyers are watching closely. Advocacy groups are taking notes. This could be the beginning of something much bigger. But what about the critics? Many South Africans, across all racial lines, believe the refugee status was an overreach. They argue that while crime affects everyone, it does not equate to systemic persecution. Some believe the 49ers exaggerated their claims to gain U.S. residency through a back door. Others say this was a calculated PR move by conservative groups in the U.S. to make a political political point about race and immigration, and yet those criticisms don't erase the outcome. The U.S. government reviewed the evidence and made a legal determination: refugee status granted, full stop. Now the question turns to the impact. How will this affect South Africa's glob image? What message does it send to investors, to tourists, to potential emigrants? And how will the South African government respond? With denial, deflection, or change? Meanwhile, the 49s are starting new lives. In small towns and cities across the United States, they are enrolling in schools, starting jobs, and trying to rebuild from the trauma they say they escaped. They've traded security gates for suburbs and uncertainty for asylum. Whether they'll ever feel truly safe again remains to be seen. This case also raises deeper, more uncomfortable questions for South Africa. What does it mean when citizens no longer trust the police to protect them, when political discourse turns into intimidation, when people feel they must flee a democracy because they fear their identity has become a liability? And perhaps the most haunting question of all, what if they're not alone? As South Africa continues to wrestle with its past, its politics, and its economic future, more citizens, black, white, and otherwise, may begin to explore exits, not just through airports, but through legal channels, claiming refugee status from a country that was supposed to be a symbol of hope after apartheid. This isn't the story of just 49 people. It's a warning sign, a crack in the foundation, a signal that something deeper is going wrong. Will South Africa listen? Will the world? Or will this be just another news cycle quickly forgotten? Whatever the case, the message has been sent, loud and clear. Let us know what you think in the comments. Do you agree with the U.S. decision? Was this a fair outcome or a political statement? And what does this mean for the future of South Africa? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We'll keep watching and reporting so you don't miss the stories that matter most.